Hi, I'm Jenny Hepler, and welcome to this episode of Connect, the live show that connects your challenges with our solutions. Today, we're streaming live to both LinkedIn and YouTube, so please feel free at any time during the show to submit any questions or comments that you have in the chat function on either LinkedIn or YouTube. You can find out more about what we do at APMG on our website at apmg-international.com. You'll also see QR codes on the screen throughout the show, which you can scan to find out more about our topic today and our guests. So today we're discussing a topic that's making headlines every day. One that's too important not to be paying attention to right now, and is also something that I'm personally very passionate about, and that's cybersecurity. All we have to do is turn on the news to hear about the latest threats in the world, from COVID mutating to a new form, to wars happening or possibly starting. And it can feel very overwhelming and frustrating, as it's not in our control, and there's little to anything that we can do about these things. One threat that is constantly there, under the surface and sometimes above the surface, whether we see it or not, is the risk of a cyber attack. Now, this can happen to large organizations, all the way down to your own personal information and accounts. And this is one threat that you can do something about by learning more about the NIST Cybersecurity Framework. You can better protect your business, your industry, and yourself, as well as your friends and family. And you don't need to be an IT expert to learn this framework. I recently took the NIST Cybersecurity Awareness course, and my background isn't in IT. It's in communications, marketing, and sales. But I found even this awareness course full of immensely valuable information. And that's why I'm so fortunate and happy today to have two guests who are going to talk about an actual case study where the NIST Cybersecurity Framework was adopted and adapted to the energy sector. Obviously, a very important sector to all of our daily lives. Today, we have with us Dr. Joseph Baugh, Associate Director at Guidehouse, who is not only a NIST certified security professional, but has a list of project management, cybersecurity, and physical security certifications, too many to list out here if we want to actually get to the show. And we have Rick Lemieux, Director and co-founder of the DVMS Institute. Rick also co-created the NIST Cybersecurity Professional Certification Training Program. And Rick is also the person that started me and many others on their cybersecurity journey. Thank you both so much for being here today. So let's start by letting the audience know a little bit more about each of you. So Joseph, can you tell our audience a bit more about yourself and your background?
Yes, thank you, Jenny. First of all, I live in an acronym-rich environment, so I'll try to define them as I go along, but they're fairly common in the cybersecurity world and the electrical generation and transmission space in the energy sector. But let me set the stage for many of my talking points today. Most of my Guidehouse clients are electrical utilities, transmission operators, and service providers, as well as electrical generation companies and other participants in the North American electrical grid, which is commonly referred to as the bulk electric system, or BES. The electrical grid is part of the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agent, which we know as CISA, critical infrastructure, and that consists of 16 critical infrastructure sectors. I work in the energy sector, which is the one that I personally consider to be the most critical, since the other 15 sectors wouldn't survive for long without energy of some sort. My sector has three separate interrelated energy industry segments, which includes electricity, oil, and natural gas. And those are referred to as segments, and I'll use that term throughout my discussion today. I currently work for the Guidehouse Energy, Sustainability, and Infrastructure, or ES&I practice, which operates globally in the energy sector, as well as several other critical infrastructure sectors. My home team is the ES&I Risk Compliance and Security Team, or RCS. We're headquartered in Salt Lake City, but our team members are all over. We have team members scattered from time zones across the country. So we do a lot of virtual work, but we support clients across all three segments of the energy sector and support them and help them achieve their business goals and objectives by developing and delivering successful cybersecurity and physical security projects. Immediately before I joined Guidehouse in 2019, I was a senior compliance auditor with the Western Electricity Coordinating Council, also known as WEC. WEC's a member of the Electric Reliability Organization, which is the ERO, and that's comprised of the North American Electric Reliability Corporation, NERC, which the Federal Energy Regulating Commission, or FERC, tasked with oversight for cybersecurity and operations and planning reliability standards. Now, there are 6 regional entities, one of which was WEC, that do the auditing compliance and investigations with the mandatory electrical grid reliability standards across the North American electrical grid. So that's pretty much what I do, and I'll pass it off to Rick.
Thank you. Rick, would you like to give a brief introduction of yourself and your background?
Absolutely, Jenny. That's a tough act to follow there. That's a really impressive resume. So, but I had the pleasure of meeting Dr. Baugh a couple of years ago when he was working with WEC as a NERC auditor. In fact, that's pretty much when our journey began together, and it was kind of in the middle of the whole DVMS Institute journey, where we were working with some of the early adopters of the NIST framework to train their organizations and and how to do that, because the framework itself does a great job of telling you the what and the why and provides all the supporting publications. But what was missing was the how. So Dr. Baugh and NERC proper were some of our early customers that we worked with to develop training to teach NERC auditors, how to go about thinking about the framework and then how to go about adopting and adapting it, or helping energy companies understand what they need to do to adopt and adapt that within their organization. I am the co-founder and the executive director of programs here at the DVMS Institute, and our mission is basically built around 3 main pillars. One is to create body of knowledge publications that support all of the detailed guidance organizations need to know how to adopt and adapt the framework. We also produce the corresponding accredited certification training programs to teach organizations those skills so they can go get it done. These programs are accredited by APMG International. They're certified by the National Cybersecurity Council, which is part of GCHQ in the UK, which is the UK's national security agency. And they're also recognized by the Department of Homeland Security CISO organization in their NICS cybersecurity training provider database. And then the third piece is really to build the community of practice, which I consider to be one of the most important elements or pillars of our organization, because the whole concept behind the Institute is to bring together the community to create communications and collaboration, so that this is a problem that we solve together and we continually solve together, because it's never going away. It's a forever journey. And so having the pleasure to work with Dr. Baugh and APMG has been a big part of our early success in getting the message out and getting people to go through the training programs and to begin adopting and adapting the framework within their organization.
Exactly. Thank you both for those introductions. So with that, let's get the show rolling with our first question. So my first question is directed towards you, Rick. Let's just start at the beginning. So what is the NIST Cybersecurity Framework, and why are organizations across the globe adopting and adapting it to their business?
That's a great first question. So the NIST framework was created back in 2014 under executive order from then President Obama, where the government was starting to realize that this cybersecurity risk was becoming a key issue, especially in our critical sectors, which Dr. Baugh mentioned the energy sector is one of them. So the government basically issued an executive mandate for NIST to go out and create a framework that could be utilized by not only the critical sector providers, but all businesses and all governments across the globe. Today, it's been downloaded in I think over 185 different countries. It's I think been translated into 9 or 10 different languages. So it is basically being globally adopted across the world. Main purpose of the framework is to provide guidance on what organizations must be doing to manage their cyber risk or their digital business risk. Okay, everywhere we turn, we're being attacked one way or another. Jenny, I think in your introduction you covered it perfectly. It's personally and professionally. So anything you learn along the way needs to be applied in both those domains in terms of protecting your own risk and the things that could happen to you personally or professionally. Our focus in terms of supporting the NIST framework is to create, these products that will allow organizations to build, an adaptive cyber resilience risk management program, that is fit for use. In other words, the organization can integrate it into their operational fabric, into their business fabric, so the entire organization can take advantage of it and use it, and that it's also auditable for purpose to ensure that it is in compliance, with the new regulations and standards that are being promoted and pushed out there by governments across the globe. The last thing I'll say is there are 3 drivers, pushing this market forward. The first is that the rules are changing. All right, just in the last couple of months alone, the United States government and its regulatory bodies, including international governments and their regulatory bodies, have changed the rules. It's no longer, you need to do this or you should be doing this. It's you must be doing this. Okay, so the rules are changing. So the organizations need to become compliant with these new rules. The second reason, and I think one of the most important reasons, is that the executive teams and their corresponding board of directors are now being held personally accountable. So they can no longer, avoid the investment that they need to make in order to protect your data and their business for their shareholders and anyone else who has a vested, interest in that organization. The third thing is the insurance option, which is what most organizations have used as their cybersecurity life preserver. That has also changed as well. The insurance companies took a beating over the last few years with all of the different successful attacks and paying out ransomware and so on and so forth. So they in turn have changed their rules. So they are now forcing organizations to prove to them that they've mitigated as much risk as possible so that those insurance companies can insure the risk that they don't know about or they haven't mitigated yet. Okay. Basically the way I like to describe it is, there was a wound in businesses called cyber risk, and they were putting Band-Aids, insurance Band-Aids on it. Now the Band-Aid has been torn off. So you really need to have surgery, which means you need to put in place the right capabilities to ensure that your organization is manages its risk in alignment with the rules that are being set by government.
Yeah, I think you put that really well, especially breaking it down into the 3 different parts. I know I've been reading a lot about the new rules that are coming out with the government as well, and that the SEC is looking at finalizing regulations within the next couple of months. For big changes with business. So it's not just cybersecurity isn't something anymore that's nice to have, or let's do this to prevent attacks. This is something that businesses must have with new regulations coming up. So let's go on to our next question, which I would like to ask Joseph. So what's driving the organizations, specifically in the energy sector, to adopt and adapt the NIST Cybersecurity Framework?
Thank you, Jenny. From a historical perspective, The electrical segment has long been the target of adversarial, cyber, and physical attacks by nation state and other hacker groups, as well as domestic terrorist organizations. These attacks and exploits are really too numerous to share, but in our limited time, but you can find out all you want and probably more with simple internet searches. My recommendation, if you're interested, is to read about the Ukrainian cyber attacks as a starting point, because we have seen evidence of very similar attacks here in the U.S., and we suspect it is from the same group. Starting with the development and approval of the Critical Infrastructure Protection, or CIP v5 standards that NERC introduced around 2015, the FERC, which has the oversight over the electrical segment, including BES control centers, electrical transmission stations, systems, and generation stations, started to focus more and more on aligning the CIP standards with the NIST standards, particularly the NIST Cybersecurity Framework, as well as NIST special publications such as the protective measures and controls that are found in 800-53B and 800-171. This focus has steadily become more extensive, and that, probably more than anything else, was the initial impetus for me to seek the NIST Cybersecurity Professional, or NCSP certification. So that's the electrical segment. The other two segments of the energy sector, the oil and gas natural gas segments, have also come under attack by adversarial parties, which includes the well-known Colonial Pipeline breach, among others. So the interstate carriers in these two segments of the energy sector are overseen by the Transportation Security Administration, or TSA, which is part of Department of Homeland Security. Prior to last year, compliance with pipeline security practices for interstate oil and natural gas carriers, as Rick said, was voluntary and mostly self-monitored under the TSA pipeline security guidelines. However, in June of 2021, TSA issued the first mandatory cybersecurity requirements, which is commonly known as Pipeline Security Directive 2021-02C, as we refer to it as SD02C. So that became mandatory and enforceable in July of 2022. Now, I'd worked previously with the American Gas Association and the American Gas Foundation on a couple of other natural gas projects. At that time, they were voluntary, and it's very hard to get people to understand. So we saw the same thing happen in the electrical segment back in the mid-2000s when there was something called Urgent Action 1200. Those of you who've been around a while may remember that. But that was a set of voluntary guidelines that ultimately proved to be pretty futile. And that was the impetus for these CIP standards. And so as the CIP standards have continued to evolve, and as I'm sure the TSA SD02C evolves, they are going to be linked at the hip with the NIST Cybersecurity Framework. So during a preliminary review of SD02C and exploratory conversations with our pipeline clients and TSA, it quickly became evident that TSA shared FERC's strong focus on the NIST standards and the special publications. In fact, their expectation was that pipeline carriers who are identified as having critical systems by TSA would implement the NIST Cybersecurity Framework and the NIST controls and other protective measures to ensure that these critical systems were protected. So that's pretty much the history of it. But keep in mind, these end customers that all three segments serve include the other 15 critical infrastructure sectors. And so we support clients in all three segments. And so I really decided the training materials that supported earning certification would provide a more rapid understanding of and a stronger background in the NIST Cybersecurity Framework and the NIST Risk Management Framework. So after reviewing the material, I decided training for and earning the certification was my best choice to integrate a robust cybersecurity assessment approach into both my current projects last year, and I'm continuing to do that into projects this year. Jenny?
Thank you. Yeah, I can certainly understand why these regulations are evolving, especially within that sector. The Colonial Pipeline incident isn't one that we really want repeated. That was a pretty significant event where they actually ended up paying ransom towards the the attackers. Now they got a lot of that back, but that was a very significant event that affected a lot of different industries across half the country. So can definitely understand why it's important in the energy sector. So thank you for that. So I'd like to move on to our next question. My next question is for you, Rick. What is the NIST Cybersecurity Certification Training Program, and why was it created?
Thanks, Jenny. The NIST Cybersecurity Professional Program, it was created to provide organizations, and I think Dr. Baugh covered it quite nicely in the previous question, to help individuals in organizations, learn the knowledge, skills, and abilities, to adopt and adapt the framework. Okay. As I mentioned, the NIST Cybersecurity Framework itself, along with its corresponding, informative reference publications like NIST 853, NIST 800-171, even things like ISO 27001, which is an international standard, they provide really good guidance on the what and the why, but not the how. So our focus in creating the NIST Cybersecurity Professional Program was to teach the how. Now, specifically, what we were focused in on is helping organizations adopt, a fast track approach to putting in place what we call, the minimum viable capability controls, so that an organization is stabilized, or its cybersecurity risk program is created, the environment to become stabilized. Right? Most organizations, especially small businesses today, don't have anything in place. They don't even know what cyber risk is. So the first thing they need to do is to understand, what is digital business? And we assume everyone knows that, but they really don't. They just think it's magic that you turn on your computer and all this wonderful stuff happens. Well, there's a lot of stuff that goes on behind that they need to be aware of. What are the risks associated with digital business? And why was the NIST Cybersecurity Framework created? And why are organizations investing in it? And Jenny, I think you covered that extremely well in your opening about, how the framework really helps you understand as an individual and as an organization the steps you need to take to be able to identify, detect, protect, respond, and recover from an attack, whether it's an organizational attack or a personal attack where someone's hacked into your accounts and stolen all your money and ruined your credit. You need to figure out how you're going to recover from that quickly. Okay. So the whole purpose of the NIST program is to provide, the training from at the individual level, and that includes both, business professionals as well as, regular people who think they need to know this stuff, which they do. Okay. As well as those responsible within organizations that are basically developing the business plan for the adoption of the framework, okay, as well as those who actually engineer it, implement it, operate it on a day-to-day basis, and continually improve or innovate it, and then as well as the executive team, so that they are all communicating and they are all working off of a common language, to achieve the goal of digital business or cybersecurity risk management.
Yeah, exactly. Because I think right now the threat landscape is becoming, larger and larger every day. And so before we were being much more reactive to, threats that were happening or attacks. And now for many reasons, we need to be proactive. And I think that's what this training really does.
Yeah,
Right?
Jenny, that's a great point. Just one final thought. You mentioned the word proactive, and that's the transition that all of the sectors are going through right now. We've always been reactive, and typically it's after a successful attack. So the damage has already been done, and the recovery process needs to begin. We need to reduce or eliminate, the success of the attack, or at least be able to mitigate it as quickly as we possibly can. So it's important for organizations to kind of shift their mentality from, just, putting up the basics, hoping that will keep them safe, because it won't. And they really need to start to expand, the ability to stabilize that environment, as I mentioned earlier, by putting in place a minimum set of controls to do that. And that's what the fast track program in the certification products teach you.
Yeah, exactly. It gives a perfect framework and a guide to use. It can seem intuitive, but, and when you start going through it, as I was going through the course, I realized, that the steps, everything makes so much sense to have in place, and it covers everything. And, for those out there who are still not, sure about being proactive, I always, I think of the analogy about the frog in the boiling pot of water.
Mm-hmm.
You put the frog in the water and you slowly heat it up, and he doesn't realize anything's happening until it's too late. And I think that's something for a lot of companies to start thinking about nowadays. Sooner rather than later. So thank you for that. So I'm going to go on to my next question. This one is for you, Joseph. So why did you become a NIST Cybersecurity Framework Professional?
Well, Rick mentioned earlier that he and I had been collaborating for several years back to the days when I was in WEC on NIST discussions and other topics. At that time, I participated with NERC quite a bit on NIST-based task forces, and we always knew that FERC was pushing for this federal framework. And so as the standard drafting teams at NERC, which I tend to sit in on quite a few of them, or lurk on them more than anything, is they're really tasked with focusing on integrating NIST standards into cybersecurity. So working in this field, it's very important that I stay on top of that. I'm a lifelong learner, and I believe in staying on top of emerging technology at all times. In fact, as a college professor, I always advise my students in my IT and business courses not to wait for the window of opportunity to open before you climb through it, before you prepare to go through it, because it will surely slam shut on your fingers if you tarry. So I think as a proactive approach, I felt it was necessary for me to become more knowledgeable with a specific approach. And I noticed a comment go by on the panel just a minute ago from Patty Blacksmith, who works in power system operations. I have a strong background in power system operations, which I developed through about 32 years in the electrical utility area. And so I agree with her comment that NIST is a welcome addition to control risk. It's a welcome addition because of the structured approach that you can apply, not just in the energy sector, but truly across all 15 other sectors as well. And so that's the main reason, not just for the certification, but really probably more so for the training materials. So when I was looking at training materials for this, there's several options out there, but Rick made me a good deal on a boot camp so I could take both the foundations and the practitioner course in one fell swoop. And so I did. And by the way, Rick, I also appreciated the 40 CEHs that I applied to my CISA, CISSP, and all my other security certs. So that was just a side benefit. But the real reason is the energy sector is under attack constantly. And if we don't prepare ourselves to fend those attacks off now, we're going to be too late in the future.
Yeah, and that's something none of us want that to happen. And I think you touched on something important there, and it's that these are not courses. Taking this professional framework is not something you take to tick a box. This isn't something where you take so that I've done that, I've got the certification for that. This is something that when you take these courses, you absolutely get the value out of. Not just each course, but each slide is giving you more and more information on how to prevent this. Rick?
Just to add to Dr. Bach's comments, I've had the pleasure not only of working with Joe and on this journey that we've been on together, but I've had the pleasure of doing this with other professionals and other college graduates or those who are about to become college graduates who have been studying cybersecurity as part of their major. And we brought in a few of them as interns last summer and ran them through the program, which was quite interesting because I wasn't really sure what the outcome was going to be since they really had no legacy, no experience, no nothing. And so we put them through the program, and then we asked them to do an assessment on the reseller partner that works with the Institute, to do an assessment of their environment to help them understand what their risks were. And then they had to present that to the whole group of us, including their college professors on a Teams call. And I was quite impressed with how quickly they were able to grasp, the concepts. And I think that's a really important thing because, cybersecurity has been kind of put into a bucket of technology bucket. Everyone thinks it's ethical hacking, pen testing, firewalls and so on. While all those things are important, it's technology. It's technology focused. So there's a skill set required to, get a job in that area. But there's also the business of cybersecurity, or what we like to say, the business of cybersecurity risk management, where, you're looking at, an organization's risk in terms of the digital products that they offer, and you're figuring out ways to mitigate that risk or reduce that risk through, more effective development of the underpinning technologies that support that, or the practices and process that support that, as well as the people that are involved with that. Okay. So I think that's, if you look at the NIST Cybersecurity Framework Program, a professional program, it kind of covers the gamut from those who are just coming into the field to folks like Dr. Joseph Baugh, who have been living in this space for a long time. And this just added another set of knowledge capabilities for him to deal with the new world that we live in around the NIST framework.
Exactly. Joseph, did you have something to add more to this question earlier?
I think, well, I did, but now I lost my train of thought. But I would like to say that, the training that I received really in earning the cert was probably equally as important as a cert. Now, I'm fortunate to work for an organization, Guidehouse, that supports all of its consultants and support staff with professional development opportunities. And so I think if a member of the audience works for an organization that supports professional development, this is a great venue, particularly if you're already in the cybersecurity space. I think there's great value to it.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's just take that one step further. And this question is for you, Rick. So what courses underpin the NIST Cybersecurity Program? Can you briefly tell us about those?
Sure. So, as I mentioned, in a previous response, that we have built products that cover the entire gamut of individuals who need to have the knowledge, skills, and abilities to do the things that they're responsible for. So we basically, we started out building, a digital business risk awareness course. And that course is the course Jenny mentioned earlier that she's taken. And that takes an individual with no knowledge base at all, okay, on a journey into understanding what digital business is. In other words, what's the magic of digital business? How do I transmit my files? How do I get on these social media sites? How do I do all this other wonderful stuff? What's happening behind the scenes? So they can get a good feel for how digital business functions and that why they need to be aware of that. Okay. Then we talk about the risk of digital business, where we've moved from a physical landscape to a digital landscape. It creates an opportunity for people to attack us in any which way, shape, or form, whether it's, in our text messaging, whether it's in our email, whether it's those pesky spam callers calling you on your cell phone every day, whether it's through social media, it's just we're constantly being attacked. So it's important for people to understand the risk associated with those attacks, okay? And then the course also focuses on teaching or introduces the concepts that are associated with the NIST Cybersecurity Framework and why both organizations and individuals need to adopt and adapt the capabilities outlined in the framework, within their own personal and professional lives. The next level up is the foundations course. As I mentioned earlier, it's really designed for those who are responsible for developing the business plan. Why should we go do this? What do we need to do? How much is it going to cost? What do we need to do from a workforce development point of view? Really pulling together all of those, capabilities. And they also, the foundation course is also geared towards those in an organization that might not live in IT, but need to be part of this core team. They could be someone in the legal department. It could be someone in the internal auditing group. It could be someone, at the executive level or an executive sponsor level, and so on and so forth. So it's important for everyone to really understand, the information they need to know in order to pull together this business case, which turns into a strategic plan and then it gets implemented and operationalized, as an organizational capability or an actual culture within the organization itself. The next one is the NIST 853 practitioner course, and this is where the rubber meets the road, and this is what Dr. Baugh was involved with. This is where you not only learn a fast track approach on how to assess your environment, understand where you're at from a risk management point of view, how to go about adopting and adapting a minimum set of controls to create a minimum viable capability to ensure that your environment is stabilized from a risk point of view. Okay, and we have a fast track model that is taught in our program on how to do that relatively quickly. Okay, and then we basically we train the individuals in the practitioner course on how to engineer a solution that will allow you to, achieve your desired state. In other words, when you do your assessment, you find out what your current state is, and then your desired state, which is probably linked to some regulation or government mandate that you need to be compliant with. So there are additional controls that you need to put in place. And so we teach organizations how to engineer how to select and engineer those controls into your environment. Okay. Mm-hmm. Excuse me. And then we teach you how to put in place additional capabilities that allow you to establish a top to bottom culture of digital business value management or digital business risk management, so that everyone in the business, whether it's, the salesperson or the marketing person or the legal person, the IT person or cyber person, they are all learning a baseline set of skills that allow them to be part of this collaborative effort to not only manage an organization's risk, but also to maintain or continually improve its value, its digital business value. Yeah. And that's what the practitioner course teaches you. And then last but not least, there are two specialist courses that we offer. Dr. Baugh mentioned one earlier on NIST 800-171, which is a set of controls that have been mandated for the defense industrial base, those who support the Department of Defense, as well as ISO 27001. And the 27001 program is really about adopting and adapting the controls and management systems associated with 27001 in the context of a NIST Cybersecurity Framework Program. So you can pretty much see that the program kind of covers a top to bottom approach of providing everyone with the knowledge, skills, and abilities they need to do their job.
Yeah, exactly. It's a really complete framework. Thank you for that overview. And I do want to say thank you to our viewers. We're getting some live questions coming in. So I am going to ask the panel, I'm going to kind of throw some questions at you here a little bit fast so that I can get to some of these live questions that are coming in. So I just have a couple of questions for you, Joseph, really on the courses themselves. So it's kind of a three-part question, but I'm going to do it in separate questions so you can just rattle through these. But which courses did you personally take?
Yes, as I mentioned earlier, Rick set me up with this boot camp course, which combined the foundations course and the practitioner course. I found both of them to be very useful. I do a lot of current state assessments, gap analysis, and developing implementation plans to reach a target state, which align totally with the practitioner course, and it's very useful. But I found the foundation course to be useful as well, because one thing that we see in the energy sector quite a bit is the presence of business silos. The technology people just want to do their thing. They don't really care about the business other than their paycheck doesn't bounce. And this is obviously a generalization, but there are a lot of silos out there where they may not understand why the solutions they're proposing or how they might support the business goals and objectives. So one thing we do as consultants at Guidehouse is we try to tie the business side of that together with the technical solutions to make sure that any solutions we propose are actually targeted towards understanding and supporting the organization's goals and objectives. So I found the foundation course very helpful from that perspective. I think the training in general really helped me emphasize and reinforce these concepts with my project teams as we work together to bring these projects to a successful close within the tight timelines that we were dictated by the TSA in the oil and natural gas sector by SDO2C. So, we're moving forward on those projects to hit the further phases of that security directive. I think the value of the courses really is knowing and understanding the holistic approach to applying the NIST Cybersecurity Framework. I know we're running short on time.
Exactly.
I could talk about this stuff all day.
Yeah, we all could. It would be great if we had more time. So I think we'll definitely do this again. So this is kind of a follow-up question, but I think you pretty much answered it, Joseph. And what would you like to share with others looking to become NIST Cybersecurity Framework professionals? I mean, could you, give a one or two sentence highlight of what you'd want to share if you had to choose?
Well, I think there are several different segments in the energy sector that should be interested, perhaps not in the certification itself. Certainly the technical people should be interested in it. Senior managers need to understand the value of the NIST frameworks, the different components of it, and how it supports their business goals and objectives. So for that segment of managerial type people, I'd highly recommend the foundations course, because that gives you a really good overview and helps you understand exactly what your technology people are going to be doing or need to be doing or should be doing. It just depends on how your maturity level is. And there's a great tool in there, the implementation tiers, that will help you define, or we can help you define exactly where you are. It's not quite a maturity matrix, but it's a capability matrix. Where are you in relationship? What's your current state in relationship to the NIST protective measures and controls? And on the other hand, for the technology people, I really recommend that they take the courses and learn the material in the practitioner course, and perhaps some of the specialists as they move on, but definitely the practice. And everybody has to take the foundation course, I believe. Is that true, Rick?
That is correct. Yeah, that's
on?
the step to go.
Okay. So,
right. Exactly.
But that's an excellent choice anyway, because it really gives you a good overview of what are we trying to accomplish here, which is always the first thing I ask when I go into a project kickoff meeting. What are we trying to accomplish here? To get a good idea of what the client thinks is going to happen and make sure we understand what they think is going to happen. Then we develop a plan to get there. So the practitioner course is great for the technology professional, both those who are already in cybersecurity, those who are interested in cybersecurity as a field, which I highly recommend because it's definitely a growth industry. And then for people who, senior managers, as everybody knows, there's still a shortage of qualified IT people in general, but cybersecurity people in particular. When I was at WEC, we were all poaching everybody's talent. And now we need to grow our own. And so companies like Guidehouse that have strong professional development programs, I suggest that they consider adding this part of their offerings.
Yep, great, thank you. So we're going to get to some live questions. Before we do, I want to just ask my last question. So this is for Rick. Can you tell others, or how can others get more information to attend these NIST Cybersecurity Framework courses?
Sure, absolutely. Yeah, the best way to get more information about the courses is to visit our website, www.dvmsinstitute.com. In there, there's a menu offering to describe our certification programs and the different options that are available, because the programs are offered as both self-paced e-learning as well as instructor-led classroom or instructor-led virtual classroom. And we have a global network of resellers who have set up multiple schedules. So you should have plenty of options to book yourself into a course if that's the preferred pathway of learning. Or you could do a hybrid. You could take the foundation course as an e-learning and take the practitioner course, with a live instructor.
Yep, great, thank you. And there's also, we've displayed a QR code on the screen that you can scan, and it'll go directly to your website. So we're going to take our first live question. This question has come in. They're actually asking this to Joseph. So who in an organization would benefit from the program? Technical, business, or both?
I actually think I covered that a little bit in my previous response, but definitely anybody involved in cybersecurity, whether technical or on the business side and on the compliance side for that matter, I think they should consider taking the foundations course just to get that initial understanding of the overall approaches. There's some very interesting information in there. It's good for building a business case. So those of you who need to present to a board, perhaps to get funding, there's great information on the business side for building that use case or the business case. And then the technical people can definitely benefit from it. There's a wide range of opinions on the value of IT certifications in general, and I've argued both sides of that with my students in debates. But the true thing is, what's the value of the training that underlies that certification, whether you get the certification or not? Now, obviously, as an IT manager, I strongly encouraged my team members to challenge the cert test and earn it. But I was also interested that they really learn something of value from it. And so, the certification really validates the effort you took. And Lord knows I've taken a ton of certification tests, but not everybody's comfortable with that. So the real value is in the training, and the icing on the cake is the certification. But the answer to your question is both at different levels.
Great. Thank you for that. And thank you for the viewer who asked the live question. We do have a couple of more. So this next question is for the panel. Will the NIST framework help us to manage and deliver strategic intelligence on threats and actors before attacks on the network happen?
I can field that one.
Sure, go ahead, Joseph.
Part of a good risk assessment process, which really is covered more under the NIST risk management framework, is active intelligence. I also work in the CIP14 space, which is physical security in the electrical segment. And one of the key parts of developing a good physical security plan is threat intelligence. Do you know what your threats are? Do you know where they're coming from? Who are the most likely actors who are going to implement exploit a vulnerability? Those concepts are equally true in the cybersecurity world. So in my opinion, the NIST framework and the associated documents, some of the special publications, as well as the risk management framework, if you have to look at it as a holistic approach, and you develop that threat intelligence model ahead of time, and that should be part of your business case for implementing NIST protective measures and controls. And the more you know about what's out there, the more prepared you are to deal with it. And that goes into assessing your current state. What are you doing now to address these advanced warnings, let's call them? And what do you need to do? You do your gap analysis. What do you need to do to reach a desired target state or cybersecurity profile that will help you defend before they happen? As we mentioned earlier, you really have to be proactive in this space. The days of just being reactive just means you're going to pay, and you're going to pay through the nose, one way or the other, either from fines, from regulatory bodies, from ransomware. You mentioned the high dollar cost of the Colonial Pipeline breach. That breach actually occurred because of something that could have been easily stopped if it had occurred, if they had taken the action when that intelligence first came out. So the cybersecurity world is constantly evolving, and we need to evolve our skills to stay on top of it.
Perfect. Thank you. We're going to go on to our next live question. Thank you for the viewer who's asked this. So what I'm hearing is that a systemic approach throughout the organization is available based on the training offerings. Rick, do you want to take that one?
Sure, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's exactly the intent of the training. It's basically, if you look at cybersecurity throughout an organization, it's basically, built on a complex system of systems, right? So there are many different elements involved in delivering digital services or digital business value, right? So when you look at what we're teaching, in the courses, we're teaching people how to think about it in the context of a complex system, and then how to build an overlay system utilizing the framework and all of your existing business systems. So that could be your digital business service management systems. It could be your project management systems and others, that when you bring them together under this overlay model, it allows you to identify, the leverage points that you can touch should something change in the threat landscape. And the threat landscape is really built around three internal threats, which are really called regulatory environments. So change the rules, you got to be able to make changes in your environment. And then the third is the threat landscape, which is a good job at describing. All right. So to answer the question, yes, it's a systemic. It's built around this kind of a multi-step process in order to get there. So it's not like you got to eat the elephant all at once. You can take it one bite at a time and improve the value, your capabilities, until you get to having this top to bottom culture. The other point I'll mention, then I'll let Dr. Baugh share his response as well, is that both the foundation, actually all the courses, with a detailed body of knowledge publication, that while you go through the training, all of the key concepts and how to apply that practically, and then all the details includes that come along well. So we're not, the student isn't just going through the training course, it's a one, and they now have the guidance that they can continue to as they go through their journey of building out a program.
Joseph, did you have something before we take our next live question?
No, let me just answer this quickly from a practical perspective. Getting back to the case study, when we first started researching for our first project in the TSA SDO2C space, it was quickly evident that TSA was not to approve incidents that didn't take that approach. That's one reason I chose the training, is to make sure that I was able to apply start to finish approach to that problem others since then. That's why I and my team members are on the NIST controls, because that's what we do. And part of the problem, as I mentioned, people don't have talent to keep the lights on or keep the gas flowing and do special projects. So people, my team and I have a case and jury who works House federal side, who also works with the NIST standard. He's here with that. So I think if you're a partner who could, I think Guidehouse is uniquely positioned with the skills to do that, because this approach is very important. Do it in-house if you have the luck to do that. But if not, you need a high-quality partner to help you with it. That's it. That's
Great, thank you. Thank you for that. Thank you to our viewers sending questions. We really appreciate it. Some great questions and a great discussion on our show today. So I just want to thank you to guests, to Rick and Joseph, and all of your great content today. Another show so that we do this discussion. With that, I'd like to close out the show. So don't forget, subscribe to our email and APMG on LinkedIn, up to date with our latest news and our upcoming Connect episodes. And I just wanted to put it back to the panel. So Rick and Joseph, do you have any closing comments? Very quickly.
I'll go first. Yeah.
Rick?
Yeah, I think, thank you, Dr. Baugh, for attending, being part of today's session. Really appreciate your insight and your knowledge in this space. And I encourage, anyone in this business, even who wants to come into this business, to begin their journey, by taking the awareness course, or you can at least connect the baseline dots in your head and to see whether or not this is good for you, because this is a high growth field. Even with all the layoffs that are going on in the industry, this area continues to expand. I think it's a great opportunity for anyone who wants to be in this business or stay in this business.
I agree with that, Rick.
Thank you.
And I'd just like to close by saying thank you for your time today. The great questions. I hope we had a great turnout. I don't really see the numbers, but I just also like to say I hope you gained some value from our discussions. And even though our time's short, you can reach me on LinkedIn and I'll be happy to answer anything else you might have. And thank you, Jenny, for being such a pleasant moderator.
You're welcome, and thank you for being on the show. And I did want to mention that as well to our viewers. Please connect with Rick and Joseph on LinkedIn. They both post amazing content. They're great to connect with. If you have any other questions as well about the training, about certification, how it's impacted their work and business. So thank you all for a wonderful show today. So we will be back soon. On our next episodes, we will be talking more about cybersecurity and digital business risk and governance. And we'll also be talking about a case study in ISO 27001. Thank you for joining, and see you next time.